All right, hello. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Marble City Opera's Behind the Scenes. I am Kathryn Frady, Executive Artistic Director for Marble City Opera, and with me tonight, I have a very special guest, Blayne Ziegenfuss. Sorry, I was getting a little bit of feedback there, just for a second. I wanted to have the drum roll before I announced our special guest. So this evening with me, I have tenor Blayne Ziegenfuss, and just wanted to give a little bit of background about Blayne and how we know each other. Blayne actually has a Master's of Music and Bachelor's of Music from North Carolina at Greensboro University. And he moved to Knoxville a few years ago, and we had a friend in common, and she had suggested that he write to me about singing with Marble City Opera. But he also has his own teaching studio here with, I think, like at least 40 students. It's always growing, a growing studio with very successful students who go out and also work in our community. Blayne has performed with the Knoxville Opera, Knoxville Choral Society, the Symphony, and it is his third time with Marble City Opera. So we're really excited to welcome you back, Blayne. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
Yay. So we're tonight going to be talking about our upcoming production, which is just a week away, Schubert's Winterize, or A Winter's Journey. So Blayne, can you tell us what is Winterize? What is it about?
So, Winterizer is a monodrama, and our character is the Wanderer. And so, as the songs sort of unfold, the Wanderer is, speaking to no one, and he is alone, and the narrative is very sort of introspective and addressed to himself. And so the cycle opens, and the events that have caused him to undertake his journey have already happened. So we really don't know what's happened. And we get a couple of clues in the first song about the girl who speaks of love, and the mother who's talking about marriage. So I think we both have come to the conclusion that he's probably had his heart broken. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so my interpretation is that, his love was unrequited. And I, sort of think that he sort of built this sort of relationship in his mind, and it didn't actually exist. And he has this sort of dream relationship shattered, if you will, when she agrees to marry somebody else. That's sort of how I've interpreted it. I think there's many ways that you can interpret it. I think it makes it a little bit darker.
Yeah.
A little bit more kind of, there's a little bit more psychology in that. So the song cycle, as he travels throughout it, he is tortured by his regrets. He's haunted by memories and the drama that has taken place. And I think that this journey is actually quite terrifying, actually. And I think it's terrifying because there's really no end goal. And he is seeking something that he doesn't know what it is.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it, about what it's about.
Yeah, no, but I think you're right that that is terrifying, and that's also relatable to people, because sometimes you just like set out on this path and you don't know why you're going on it, and you don't know what's going to come of it, but you just like open that door and walk through it. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's relatable in that way, for people in many stages of life.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's a song cycle. So can you explain to our audience what a song cycle is, and really what's the main difference between a song cycle and an opera?
Yeah. So a song cycle is a group of songs that are individually composed and completed, and they're designed to be performed sequentially. And usually you want them to all be, you don't want to pick and choose pieces. You want them all to be performed as one. And they're usually connected by thematic material, either poetically or musically or both. So that's really what it is. And they're usually performed in a concert setting versus an opera, which is a fully staged event.
Right. Which is fun because now we're going to turn this piece into a fully staged operatic experience, which I think.
Right.
So
Yeah.
really, I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities there, you know, especially with Winterize in terms of the song cycle, because it's, you know, a little over an hour. The theme is there, but like a monodrama would be for one person opera, I think that there's, you know, arguably a lot of material there that's worth staging and developing.
Yeah. And I think another big difference, you know, I think that there are obviously one man operas out there. You've even done one, right? I'm pretty sure.
One, yeah.
And so, but I think that that's a big difference here. Is you don't see so many of those, and you see, you know, operas are an event that involves so many different people, and this is very much pared down, partially because of the times we're living in, but partially because we don't need a ton of people. This is telling a story from, you know, just one particular point of view versus in an opera when you have different characters and you sort of get to know each of them, and then how they sort of all, the point of view of them as a collective.
Yeah.
Sort of different in that way. And I think the other thing that's really different about this is that an opera, you know, the action and the music is rarely interrupted unless you have an intermission. You know, it's continuous. And this will be obviously as continuous as possible, but there are brief pauses between the songs, and the music and poetic material sort of changes from each one.
Right.
Which is
right.
It's different.
Yeah, those are those are good points. Thank you for making them. I think, you know, because even with one of the one-woman shows that I have done, La Voix Humaine, she's on the telephone. And so while you don't see or hear from the other character, she is talking to somebody else, which is even different than what we're talking about this man's journey is, because he is really alone with his thoughts. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. All right. So do you have a favorite piece? How many are there? There are 24 pieces, right?
Yeah, there's 24 songs total. It's hard to choose a favorite, but I've got a couple. I love number 4 and Erstarrung. I think this is really where we start to see a little bit of his manic side. And vocally, I feel like I can really let go. So that's fun for me. And then I love number 11 and number 12. That's Frühlingstraum and Einsamkeit. And I think that these moments, which come about midway through, are probably the most heartbreaking moments in the entire piece for me. You know, he's dreaming and he's not wanting to wake up from this dream, and it is interrupted, and he's sort of brought back to reality. And then in number 12, he, I think, finally fully comes to the realization that he is isolated and he is alone, and I just find that heartbreaking. I think number 21 probably is my favorite. And I just think that the music is gorgeous. The music is just stunning.
And which one is 21 again?
The end. So the text, I mean, we're closing into the end of the cycle. We're closing into death, if you will. And really the inn is a metaphor, or the graveyard.
Right.
He didn't metaphor for graveyard or vice versa.
Yeah. I think in my, I always, when I go to the translation, I think it's interesting that it's called the inn, because it really is talking about the graveyard the whole time. So
Yes.
it's an interesting, um, descriptive word to use for the graveyard. And it's like,
Yeah.
are you walking into this graveyard and it's becoming your home? Is that like, really, is he facing death in that way, you think?
It's very dark, and it's halfway through the poem. He's asking the question of, are there any rooms here? Are there any rooms here in this house? And I'm just like, wow, it's just
Right. It's dark. It's dark. Yeah. It's like you go into, I don't know what, I can't remember what they're called, but they have like those rooms where you can actually have, a coffin in the
yeah,
wall next to other people. And it's sort of like creates that idea for me,
yeah,
are there any rooms available? But
yeah,
he's really talking about like the graves in the ground,
yeah.
so yeah. Yeah, it is dark. It's fabulous. Well, those are all great choices. And if you want to hear if our audience is interested in hearing any of Blayne's favorites, number 4 is actually in our little trailer, as well as on the preview that we had last Thursday. So check that out as well. And come to our performance and hear all of them. So, what do you feel like you are bringing new to the portrayal of this piece that other people haven't done?
So I really think actually the biggest thing that's new is, what we're doing together, and that is our collaboration in staging it. And I've, in doing research, I came across a few staged versions of this work, but I some of them were really great, and with actually lots of like cool staging. Some were very sparse, but there's only like 2 that I came across,
Yeah.
and so I think that that's really the biggest thing that that I think is new,
Yeah.
because the music is the same.
Right.
You know.
But you have your own unique, I think, perspective and way of singing each of the pieces.
Right.
Just in terms of my own listening and studying, and so I think that just the fact that you're singing it makes it unique and special to you.
Yeah.
And then what we're going to be collaborating on, even though there are, like you mentioned, I think there's like 1 or 2 other staged versions of this. Ours is going to be unique to us. I know I've seen photos, but I've never seen the piece completely staged. So, when I'm coming up with the staging, it is all from my imagination,
Right.
and from the score and the music and your interpretation, as well as one that I've listened to. So I think that's going to be really fun to collaborate on and really create our own version of this, along with the visual elements that I'm creating for the video projection. I think it's going to be really, really quite special. So
I think it's really going to bring it to life.
yeah.
In a way that I think maybe even people who have heard this piece before wouldn't. I think they're going to say, wow, honestly.
Yeah, it's a completely new way to imagine it,
Yeah.
So it's really cool. We're talking about staging the song cycle. Do you feel there's a different approach to this character than if you're playing a character in an opera?
I don't know that there's necessarily a different approach to the way that I would maybe learn it. I think it's sort of strange to me because I'm used to having so many people there and being able to, feed off of the other characters and build stories with the other characters. And so I think that that's what really makes this different for me. What comes to mind, honestly, when I thought about this was, when me and you had our duet in Pagliacci. We were constantly feeding off each other's energy and to make it, comedy. and I think that that helps. And so this is totally different. There's no, it's all me.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of
no
like
pressure.
you just have to dig deep down inside, and I think just kind of really live with this character and these poems in a way that you might not necessarily have to do when you have other people to sort of feed off of.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to, in rehearsals still, hopefully I'll be able to give you some things to feed off of too. And so even though you're going to be up there on your own, hopefully we'll have a good collaboration to get there. So maybe you won't feel quite as alone, you know. We make Grace is part of, yeah, she'll be there, and her piano playing will be part of the character that you're playing off of as well. And so it'll be a fun adventure. I mean, you're basically going on your winter's journey with this piece and performing it in this way. You also mentioned yesterday, I think, something interesting about how you kind of get to decide in this piece what your background for the character is, whereas within the opera, a lot of times you'll have a lot of, you know, more detail about who these characters might be. Yeah.
I think that that's also probably, I think that that's the cool thing about it. I also think it is a challenging thing, because it's nice to open up an opera score and be like, okay, I know what I need to do here. And this one, it's a little more convoluted.
Yeah. Well, because it's all poetry too, so we really do get to interpret it how we want. Actually, can you tell us who I can never pronounce his name, so I'm going to let you do it. The poetry is by Müller. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Müller. Yeah. I can never do those umlauts anymore. Out of practice on my German umlauts.
It's just with an E coming through it.
Yeah, Müller. Yeah. Good. I'm glad I could have this coaching while we were here. I don't very rarely sing in German anymore, so I'm like, oh, those umlauts. Although my voice teacher, I'm going to stray for a second. My voice teacher used to have he used to teach the German diction class. He studied a lot of German and worked over there, but he always had a difference. I can't remember which one it was, but you know, the Muppets, the chef, and that's how he used to like describe how you pronounce some of those umlauts. I always remember that.
Whatever works, I guess.
You know, yeah. Get that Texas girl to get those, you know, proper vowels. Goodness gracious. Well, I'll leave all of the proper vowels in the German for you this time. So there's a lot of times this is performed by a baritone. So can you talk to us about tenor versus baritone singing Winterize?
So, well, the piece originally was written in the higher key. And so, you know, it's been transposed to the lower key for the baritone. So Schubert wrote it in the higher key. So there's that. But I think, you know, I think some people prefer baritone voices in it. I think the warmer timbre of the baritone voice, the darker timbre sort of lends itself to this kind of dark, moody music that we're doing. But I think, you know, on the flip side, I like hearing the tenor voice, especially for a lot of the higher dramatic stuff as well. So
absolutely, yeah.
I've got favorites from all. I mean, I love Fischer-Dieskau's version, but, you know, I'm a big fan of Ian Bolstridge's version. Jonas Kaufmann has a wonderful recording.
Oh, yeah.
And he's one of my favorite tenors. And I've known other people. I've known women who've sung this. So
right.
I think it could be for anybody.
Yeah, it's interchangeable, really. You know, I ask you that question because it sometimes gets asked of me, and I thought we would just talk about it for everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's also interesting, you know, that these songs and song cycles in general, were written and composed for different voice types, you know, with the intention that like many different people could perform them. And I think that's like a very foreign concept in terms of what opera is used to, because these roles are
Yeah.
very specific, you know, for what, not even just soprano tenor, but like what kind of soprano, what kind of tenor. So I think that's a really interesting difference also between the song cycle and the opera. And I
Yeah.
mean, I like tenors performing it. I think there's, you know, a lot of, you know, but again, I think anybody can, you know.
Yeah, I do
But
too. And I think it totally comes down to what people prefer.
yeah.
So,
But you have such a beautiful tone. You get like the same, you know, this dark warmth of your tone, you know,
hmm
is it's the same. If you like a baritone singing this piece, you'll love Blayne singing it also.
well, I've gotten mistaken for a baritone a couple times.
That's not bad, you know. It's nice to have that warm color.
If
So
in
tell,
another life I wish I was no, in another life I wish I was a mezzo soprano, but
don't we all?
right. But you know, I remember I was in my, not to digress, but I was doing my master's degree, and I walked into the studio one day and I looked at my teacher. His name's Dr. Wells, and I was like, I want to be a baritone. I'm tired of being a tenor. I hate it. And he was like, okay. And he's like, find some lower stuff. And I was like, okay. And would you know, as we spent a semester as a baritone, and my top just opened up completely.
That's
And
amazing.
it was amazing, but I did get to spend, 6 months
A
as a
fair amount of
baritone.
time.
It was
I
nice.
got to spend some time as a mezzo too, so I think, you know, I think it helps.
It
You know, if you
does.
spend some time in the lower voice, not to get too teachery, but you know, if you spend time building the middle and the low, then the top tends to work
Yeah,
better. So
I
yeah,
agree. It did for me, so.
yeah, me too. So therefore, I'm just kidding.
Right? It works for everybody.
Oh goodness, just kidding. All right. Well, so your collaborating partner on this is also new to Marble City Opera, Grace McMullen. Can you tell us a little bit about Grace and how you know her and how long you guys have been working together?
Yeah, so Grace is a very lovely person. I love working with her. We met about a year and a half ago. I reached out to UT because I was looking for a pianist to play for some of my students in their lessons, and I figured what better way to give somebody experience than somebody who is doing this. And so she responded and said she was interested, and so we got to working together in that way. And then I did a competition last year, and I asked her to play with me because I just liked working with her with my students, and I thought it would be good to collaborate with her on that. And so we've just been working since then. And once we finished that, I was like, well, let's find a new project to work on. So we kind of came across Winterize. I was like, I've always wanted to perform this, so why don't we make this a project? So that's sort of how we met and how long we've been working together. And she's a fabulous pianist. She did her master's at UT. She studied with Dr. Class in collaborative piano. And I think she freelances for a bunch of the students over there, and then she works at Ball Camp Baptist Church here in town.
Okay, great.
Playing over there. But yeah, she's very good.
Yeah, she is, and she is very nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a great
very
combination.
intuitive, very sensitive, very sensitive musician.
That's great, especially for a piece like this where there's so much, you know, collaboration between you and the pianist.
Yeah.
I think that's really awesome. So, yeah, you mentioned that you guys decided to do Winterize, and I think, you know, kind of something that you said is what I think all great projects come out of. Like, hey, let's do this. Let's do this. It looks like a fun idea, you know, and then, you know, something springs from it. And you actually, I think you wrote back to me in January or February about whether or not Marble City Opera would be interested in programming Winterize. At that time, I was in the middle of Shadowlight and very busy, but I know I had said like, let's talk about it later, and then COVID happened, and and I had at that time already planned a different season for our staged season. So yeah, it was just crazy kind of how it worked out. And as soon as I knew I really needed to pare everything back, I was like, hey, Blayne.
Timing there.
It was, yeah, absolutely. But also, it's to help you all with a recording project, is that correct as well?
Yeah, the goal is that was sort of how this all came about. I was like, well, why don't we just record this and make a recording of it, and then release it on like streaming services and whatnot. And so
that was fortuitous also.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. That's the end goal. It's probably about a year out before we'll start, because we'll do some fundraising here in the next year, and try and come up with the funds to fund this project. But we found a great studio here in town called Orelation. They're in South Knoxville, and they've got a nice space and a nice piano, and they offered to like make a video for us so that we could do the fundraising. So it was
nice.
They were great guys when I went in and talked to them. So that's the goal, and we will probably line up a couple of other performances of it now that we have learned all of the music and are doing it. So
yeah, and since we're recording it, we can help you out with some footage too.
Awesome. That'll be fun.
Yeah. It's very exciting, and you'll have to also tell us about your fundraising, and for that, and we'll make sure that our audience knows how they can support you and Grace as well, and helping you get that going.
Absolutely.
So we kind of already talked about the differences between the one-man show versus the cast of many, but do you have any challenges that you find that go with that? Like what would be the biggest challenge, you think?
So I think, I don't know if it pairs with that particular question, but I think the biggest challenge with this piece for me, honestly, has been getting into the mind of the Wanderer. Psychologically, he is in a very resigned state. I think he's numb emotionally, doesn't show any outward feeling, and he doesn't shed any tears hardly, except for like in 4 of the pieces.
Yeah, 4 out of 24. Yeah.
And so, as a singing actor, like, I really have to live with the poetry, and find ways to that I can relate to this psychological state, because I'm not a very overly emotional person, but I'm also not like, I don't like hide my feelings very well. So I think I've been sort of trying to just think about past experiences that have brought me to maybe close to the same psychological state, or something that can relate that way. I think we all do that when we're trying to find a character, is building off of our own life experiences. But that one's been a hard one because this is so dark. It's so dark psychologically. And I think
we'll get you there, with the darkness. You've come to the right person. No, I'm just kidding.
And I think that it requires a total sort of immersion into this bleak world of despair and loss. And I think that is difficult, because the subject explores themes that I think will disturb us. And I think it reminds us of our own lives, and it can remind us of our own mortality. And I think that's the biggest challenge with this whole piece.
Yeah, it's going to be a journey,
Yeah, it is.
It really is. I'm excited about it.
Both, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are many of those poems that I just will sometimes come to when I'm rereading them and just like stop and reread it, and I'm like, oh, it's just like it hits you, you know. They're very powerful.
They are very
Um,
powerful.
very powerful.
And I've had those moments. I continue to have those moments, and I was reading through. I don't remember which one it was the other day, and for some reason it just never clicked, and it finally clicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, dude, you're just going through all the things right now.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things about this is that people who, if whether they come in person or online, they'll get the online version as well, and that is going to be available to them for about a week. So I think with this piece especially, watching it more than once will be really informative. You know, if people
Yeah.
have the time and the interest to watch it more than once, I would suggest doing it, because you won't catch everything the first time. And I think that these pieces are, you know, are that in which you read it once and you're like, okay, and you go on, you come back to it and you're like, oh wait, what? You know?
Yeah.
So I think that that'll be a cool thing. I hope for our audience that they'll be able to go back and watch it, you know, a second time. So
I think it's yeah, I think that, like, even for us as performers, that's I think the more that I do this, I think each performance will be different. I think you will take something away each time, and I think that even is the same, you know, across the board with opera, because you could be revisiting a character and play it completely differently the next time because you're at a different place in your life.
oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so
I mean, even performance to performance. I don't mean to, but my last performance is normally the best one. So I know people like to come to opening night, but really, really.
yeah, I agree. That's how mine is. That's usually, you know, especially with a new role.
hmm
You know, you're getting to know. You're leading up to this. You're getting to know the character on your own, and then you get into the rehearsal process and trying to figure that out. I mean, I think that that was a big thing for me when we did Pagliacci back in August. It was like finally by the last night, I was like, okay, I understand my relationship to all these characters, and you know, that's when I think it really gets good.
Really clicks. Yeah. Well, and also as a singer, you don't have to. The last performance, you know, at least for me in my mind, I know the next day is a day off, and I'm not going to sing the next day, so I don't have to necessarily hold anything back. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not. I don't have any reservations in terms of how I'm going to perform it, because I can leave everything on the stage because I don't have to do it again the next night.
Yeah.
So, yeah. For me, I'm like, come to the last performance. Opening night is cool, but closing, that's where it's at. Um, so, what are you most looking forward to in this performance?
Um, I think two things. I actually think bringing this to the stage and the audience experiencing this music, and bringing this to Knoxville. Um, you know, this song cycle, I mean, surprisingly, doesn't really get performed very often. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
beast, and it's 70 minutes worth of German romantic music, you know, which I mean I would sit through any day. But I think I'm excited about that, and I'm very excited about the staging. I think I'm just so excited about that added element to this, because I have seen this performed live in concert before back in college, um, and and it was great. It was wonderful, but I think that this is just going to add just it's like the icing on the cake
Yeah.
for this type of thing. So,
Yeah, it's exciting.
yeah.
I'm excited too, especially we've only had, just for our audience to know, we've only had one rehearsal together. Blayne has been working on this with Grace for quite some time. He's one of the ways that opera singers always tend to work is that we prepare our roles before we show up to rehearsal for staging. So, you know, he's already memorized, and they already have like a great working relationship and a collaboration going, because we're working with the pianist that he's been working with, which is a great advantage to what we're doing. but we open on Friday and we just started staging yesterday. So we have our work cut out for us. That's one of the things that we're doing right now in order to keep everybody safe and healthy during these challenging times of COVID, is having shorter rehearsals and having smaller casts. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and I think it's one of the biggest differences and challenges for me, not only as a producer but as a stage director, is the quick rehearsal process.
Yeah.
You know, especially with a piece like this, it's dark. There's so much there. It's, you know, there's so much emotional range in it, really, even though it is psychological, you know, and he is having these like feelings that he holds back, you know, we're not holding them back when we perform them. So we have, it's a lot, you know, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges on my end from it, with COVID and everything like that. But we, just for our audience's knowledge, we follow all of the guidelines, and Blayne even sang with his mask on for our staging rehearsal last night, and we have hand sanitizer everywhere, and so we're doing all of the things and following all of the guidelines to keep everyone safe during rehearsals, and we will be doing that as well after in the performances. So
Yeah.
I always like to ask these questions before I tell the audience a little bit more about our production. What do you miss most about pre-COVID rehearsals?
I think I honestly, I just, well, not singing with masks on and being able to, you know, be up and close and personal with people,
Yeah.
and sing at people, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's, you know, the it's just like, especially when you have a cast, it's just you're up close and personal with everybody, and you know, in this situation you just really have to, you're distanced, and it's weird even though you're in the same room and you're only like 6 feet apart, 12 feet apart. It's strange. So
It is strange.
I miss
Yeah.
that, I think, the most.
Yeah. You're still like alone because there's still this, you know, physical wall that we're essentially putting up, these barriers. I mean, we can still see each other, but yeah, we do have these walls there to keep us all apart. And I would say that that's one of the things I miss the most too. It's just like the socialization of what rehearsals are normally like, you know, and yeah. So is that basically the same for what you miss pre-COVID life in general, or is there anything different that you miss
Pre-COVID life.
What was that?
I miss traveling, like
Traveling.
really, really bad.
Yeah.
We've had a few trips that have changed and canceled, and so I really miss traveling. You know, and hugging people, and you know, going going out and being merry with my friends, and I miss being less anxious,
Yeah.
all the time.
Worrying every day
Yeah.
who you come into contact with. Yeah.
And you know, worried that, oh my gosh, I stood too close to this person, you know, those type of things. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I travel.
Travel, definitely. Travel, restaurants for me. We haven't been to a restaurant since before. I mean, I haven't been to a restaurant since February. I mean, I miss some of my favorite places, favorite places to eat, like downtown. I haven't been to Cafe 4 in what feels like a gazillion. It feels like a lifetime, and I miss, yeah, hanging out with people. Oh, one day soon, we won't have to worry anymore. Yeah. So do you have a different process when it comes to preparing mentally during this strange time? Like, or is the process the same? Or do you find, like, because of all of these extra anxieties that you have, that like you have to prepare yourself mentally in a different way?
I think for me the anxiety part is a big one. I think this time around I'm a little less anxious. I mean, I really shouldn't be, but I am since we've already done this once
Right. And
in
it's with
August.
a smaller cast, yeah.
Um, but so like in terms of just, I think just kind of making sure I'm just taking all the precautions that I can. I think just help with the anxious part. I think
Yeah.
that's really about it. Is just making sure that I am washing my hands. I'm wearing a mask, and I'm not out and around people and that type of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. I find I have to write more to-do lists, and
yes,
just like have like a long checklist and make sure that I'm really following, everything, like, because it's a new set of rules essentially that I have to follow. Um, and on this production, we don't have a stage manager, so I don't have anyone who's sitting next to me going, "Remember, Kathryn, don't forget X, Y, and Z."
yeah, yeah.
So yeah. Although I have threatened to call my administrative director, Kayla Beard, on several occasions and say, I may have to call you and have you remind me all of the things that I should be doing.
Wow.
She'll just have to hear from me by phone now, rather than in person next time, maybe. So, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit about Blayne and about our production of Winterize. Just wanted to remind you all that we hope that you will come to our performances on November 6th and 7th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They are in person at First Baptist Knoxville downtown in Trenton Hall. You can find that information on our website, marblecityopera.com. These in-person performances are also going to be virtual performances at the same time on November 6th and 7th at 7:30 p.m. So if you have friends who aren't in Knoxville who you think would love to watch this performance, let them know about it, and they can join us virtually on those same nights. And as I mentioned before, the virtual performance after it finishes that night will be available to you for the following week. So we hope that you will join us one way or another. And we have early arrival times for the in-person patrons. You can arrive up to an hour early. We will have staggered and limited seating. We will be requiring masks, but don't worry if you forget one. We have plenty to go around. There will be hand sanitizer, and we will be following all the guidelines. So our main goal is to be able to perform for you and entertain you in a safe environment. So we hope that you will join us either online or in person. And you can find those tickets at www.marblecityopera.com. If you'd like to have more information about Winterize, you can also, on our YouTube page, find the preview that we premiered last week with a few little snippets of songs from the cycle, and the week before we had a text reading. So if you'd like to know what it is that Blayne is going to be singing about, you can find the text reading there with Brandon Gibson and Joshua Allen reading the text. There's also a translation for you to download on our website, as well as a program. So we hope that you have all the materials that you need. If not, please feel free to contact us and get in touch. Let us know what you need, what you're looking for, and we'll help direct you there. So again, I'm Kathryn Frady with Marble City